Welcome to the ShodCast. It's week 16, and that means playoffs round number 2. We have Matthew and the Rusty Truckers. We have Lafferty, Daniel in the upper right-hand corner, and then we have the Fat Jims in the lower right-hand corner. All 4 people in the playoffs. Can it get any more exciting? Mike, are you excited?
I don't think so. I think this is it's gonna be an awesome round 2 here. Very interested to hear what Matt has to say. Just to start off the show, I'd just like to say that I actually wish I had like a name tag I could write vindicated on it, because that's how I feel after the frauds didn't score 90 points in the first round of the playoffs last week.
Matthew, you get to play your first matchup this week.
Yeah, it was a long wait and kind of was sweating it out, even though I wasn't involved in the first round, and kind of just thinking about what I was going to do and how I was going to try to use my advantage to the best of my abilities for the rest of the playoffs. And I think we got a game plan, and hopefully things work out the way we want them to, and bring home a trophy here.
All right. Well, we're gonna get to everything that happened and next week's matchup in just about 5 minutes here. But first, we have a Pokemon.
Who's that Pokemon?
Your hints last week were 2017 second leading scorer for the Albarville Charbacues, averaged 15.7 points a game, and this AFC QB is now a free agent in the NFL.
I said Blake Bortles. I think that's the correct answer.
Blake Bortles.
Blake Bortles.
What gave it away?
I mean, it just kind of looked like his head.
right.
I remember him being on Steve's team. I think that's about all I was going off of.
I think that was the year that he actually took the Jaguars to the AFC Championship. That was impressive.
Yeah, I think that was the game against Tyrod where the Bills just couldn't do anything.
Oof. Yeah. Well, better days. And speaking of better days for a lot of teams, and worse days for some teams. Like my team is fine, going 11-3 during the season, or was it 11-2 during the season, and then
No, 11-3.
11-3 during the season. I don't know if these update during the playoffs or not. 11-3 during the season, and then a loss to the 6-8 Fat Jims. Matt, what happened here? We would love to hear some comments from Van Pelt himself down below, and I'm sure he sent you some notes.
Well, I think Neil was surprised to get this win. It kind of all started on Thursday night with George Kittle putting up 2 touchdowns and 90 yards receiving. That was something that really nobody saw coming. Kind of started off his week on the right foot. And then the way it ended with Vince really not getting much out of Miles Sanders, really struggling to put up any points at all. And he did end up dropping Trey McBride in favor of Tyler Conklin. And I think McBride had more than 9 points, and Conklin just had that 1.9. So even that there would be the difference potentially. So, Allen, had a great game. Tua had a great game. Some of the guys have been good for him all year. Were good, but just not a lot of supplemental scoring for Vince, and it cost him, unfortunately.
Mike,
good for Neil.
Mike, what's your analysis of this matchup here?
Yeah, it's kind of rough for Vince. He had such a great start to the season. But, tight end's been tough for everybody this year, and Vince had one of the 3-4 best, in my opinion, and, Goddard went on IR, and, it's just it's a tough loss for him. Like Matt said, if he really gotten anything on the tight end position, he would have won this matchup. Miles Sanders getting 1.9 points is rough, especially since Jalen Hurts had 3 rushing touchdowns last week. If he gets one of those, he's probably going to win. So, it's tough. Vince had a great season. Obviously, probably not the ending he would have expected. Picking Neil, having the first selection and going down to the person he picked is pretty tough, and just was not the year of the dog.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. Next matchup, it also was not the year of number 8, the Van Buren boys. Mike, this was a close one. You must have been biting your nails to the very end.
Yeah, Monday night was not a super enjoyable experience. I mean, I felt pretty good. I only needed, I think, like 6 points out of Daniel Jones. I mean, he only ended up getting 9.9, so it's not like he blew it out of the water. But yeah, I mean, Grizz, again, it's kind of funny. Like the selections, both of them went against him. And Grizz, he picked the one person he couldn't pick essentially. Like I'm the only playoff team that outscored him. And the same thing happened to me the first year we implemented the selection process. Like, it's just kind of funny how that works out. I picked Jamie and Steve, and I don't remember who the other person was, but I would have beaten both of the other two people. It just adds another layer to it, which is awesome. But it's a game of inches. I mean, AJ Brown caught like a 60-yard pass and got tackled at the 1-yard line. Like, that would have done it for VVB. And Latavius Murray, there's 2 other rushing touchdowns, I think, that were from like within the 3-yard line that went to other people. So the opportunities were there, and it just obviously didn't work out for him. So, but on my side, I picked up Mitch Trubisky late last week. He got a rushing touchdown, which kind of is like huge for me, because if you look at my bench, like nobody else really did much of anything. Really, if I had anybody else in that OP spot, I think I would have lost. So yeah, very excited to get the win. Putting up 146 in the first week of the playoffs is a good feeling. If I had a second starting quarterback this weekend, I'd be feeling better. But hopefully we'll get Cortland Sutton back, and we're playing somewhat near full strength.
So we go from the highest scoring game of the week, which added up to what, 180, 190, or 290 points. I don't know. I'm not very good at math. 300 to the lowest, to less than 200 points in 1 week. Nation coming up with the win, 102 to about 89. Matt, take this one away.
Well, I think this all boils down to, Feel the Rush just not having, really good play from his good guys. I mean, like Devonta Adams had 6.8 points. That might be his lowest score of the entire season. Honestly, Amon-Ra against the Jets is not a horrible number. Like, for him to get 14, 15 points, like, that's a really tough matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I guess you can't really put it on him, but like Swift was kind of pedestrian. Huntley, 5 points, just out of the quarterback position for you to score, less than 13 points collectively. Just, you're never going to win if that happens. It's just not going to happen for you. Yeah. And on the other side of things, the Nation got enough to get it done. Like, Derrick Henry had a big game. Aaron Jones, was one of the guys on Monday night that he needed to score points, and he ended up putting up a big game. I think he only needed like 8 points out of Lazard and Aaron Jones to get it done, and was able to get there pretty easily in the first half. So everybody kind of knew going into that game that it's very, very unlikely that the Muppets would have a problem outscoring Feel the Rush. So, yeah, so Mike was right. I mean, the frauds revealed themselves in the first round of the playoffs, and I think you could maybe question some of the decision making about the roster makeup. Like, Cam Akers and Dobbins are both on the bench, but honestly, I can't
believe you didn't start Heineke. That's a no-brainer for me over Mac Jones. I mean, Huntley got a concussion like that.
It still wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
Rob and I talked about this quite
if it was
extensively.
Just that one. Yeah, if it was that one switch, it wouldn't have mattered. But if you're looking at a couple switches, then maybe it's a closer game. But either way, I think Feel the Rush, you only had one guy over 20 points. It's
Yeah.
tough to get wins when you only have one guy over 20. Or the other alternative is every single player gets more than 10 or 15. Then you're looking at potentially getting a win too. But unless you got multiple guys over 20, it's tough.
Right. Playoff selection. Are you ready to make your choice, Rusty Truckers?
Yeah, I think I am.
All right, let's move along.
I mean, I've already made it. I'm just ready to reveal it.
So we have the My Team is Fine, BBB, and Feel the Rush all eliminated. So you have your choice between the Fat Jims, the Lafferty Daniels, and the Nation of Muppets. Who do you choose?
Yep. Yeah, well, the Rusty Truckers have decided to invite the Fat Jims to come to the truck stop, and we'll be hosting them this week, and hopefully getting a win and advancing to the championship. Certainly wish the best of luck to Neil. Disappointed he couldn't make it on tonight. He's working. One thing that I can say that's going to be exciting is we will have a McKenney brother in the championship. Somebody from the McKenney family will be playing for the Trophy this year, which is always a good thing.
I guess it's up to you or I, Mike, to kind of ruin that then, right?
I guess so.
Because that will be the other matchup. All Shod Final Four in the playoffs.
Mhm.
All right, so let's take a look at some of these matchups that we would potentially have then. These haven't been updated, so what's the best way to do this? Let's take a look at the box score and see if we can do like a split window.
So in terms of the strategy here, I think part of the thing is I've got to get a win this week. I can't be worried too much about the future if I don't get a win. And I think that playing against the Jims gives you the best chance of winning. I think he has the weakest team remaining. He's got the opportunity to take down, Slay the Giant twice in a row. And I mean, that could certainly happen, but I feel pretty good about my team against his. I think it would certainly be an upset if I can't get the win. But then looking ahead, I'm this week I was definitely not going to be playing the Nation. The matchups are great. He's got, a lot of dangerous matchups here this week, namely Derrick Henry against Houston. I mean, that's going to be just an absolute feasting game for him. Tennessee has to win. They're starting to have the division slip away to Jacksonville, so they're going to feed him. And I mean, Houston's terrible against the run, so I think this is the kind of smash spot where you just don't want to see Derrick Henry flying up against you. And then, some of the other matchups, Geno Smith at Kansas City looks like it's going to be a high-scoring game potentially. Justin Herbert is playing against the Colts, who kind of don't really have much to play for anymore this year. So I think he's going to have an easier time than he might against a more competitive team. Look at Aaron Jones against Miami if he's healthy. I mean, that's going to be a lot of high point scoring game, I would imagine. Probably a lot of targets. He's been catching the ball pretty well. He's been ceding some carries to AJ Dillon, but I think catching balls, he's still pretty prolific. And then the supplemental guys will have to kind of pick up the steam from there. I mean, I think Kenneth Walker in that game environment might be good. Chigo Okonkwo, again, soft matchup against Houston. There's no reason why he can't get in the end zone potentially. So this is a team I definitely did not want to play this week. It was immediately crossed off my list.
All right.
And then,
about...
looking – I'm sorry?
Did you want to move over to Lafferty? Or you want me to stay on Nation there?
Yeah, move to Lafferty. And so if you look at Lafferty, really, I mean, he's got good matchups too, which is why I ended up choosing Neil. I think his matchups are a little bit tougher, plus his team is not quite as strong. So it kind of made the decision relatively easy. But I want to scoot over to week 17 for Lafferty because this is where things are a little bit different. I'm kind of feeding Lafferty to the nation this week because I really would prefer not to play Lafferty in week 17. I still think my team is better, and I think that I have a better chance of beating him in week 17 than me. But certainly of all the teams, Lafferty is the team I least want to play in week 17. And that's primarily because there's a lot of, better matchups for him than there are for some of the other players that the Muppets have a little bit tougher matchups. So that's what kind of made my decision. Ideally, the way this plays out is I get a win this week. Muppets get a win this week, and I can hopefully take down the Muppets in the championship.
Interesting stack of cards you have here.
Yeah.
Mike, how do you feel about the way things are shaking out? How do you feel?
Well,
about
I mean,
this
is what I expected. I assume that there'd be a McKenney Brother Bowl in the semis here, and you and I would be facing off. With Chubb potentially a little banged up right now. He didn't practice yesterday. I didn't see if he practiced today or not, but obviously that's a huge factor. Neil's gonna have Trey McSorley playing quarterback for him this weekend. Obviously not ideal. So I don't think that matchup's going to be particularly close. Our matchup, though, Klein, it's going to be extremely interesting because I do think that Derrick Henry is going to feast, but I don't see a ton of other smash spots in my mind. The Cleveland game against the Saints is supposed to be like record type of cold and wind. Like, that game could be just an absolute, nightmare for fantasy scoring. Kenneth Walker hasn't practiced yet this week. It's possible that he doesn't play. That would be a huge loss for you. And I mean, there are a lot of green opponent ranks when you go through your team. Debo being out is obviously a huge loss for you.
Right.
I mean, in theory, you're going to get Darren Waller back, which I think is a better option than Okonkwo, but we'll see.
In theory.
But I don't know. I also have a lot of green numbers, in my opponent ranks. Like I think it's going to be a high scoring match. I think
both of you guys outscore me and Neil. I think Neil and I will have the two lowest scores of the week. That's my prediction.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of matchups that I really like this week. Jefferson seeing a red 5 next to his name doesn't really matter. He's gonna get his. Especially, I mean that's something that also makes me feel good is that there is bad weather all over the U.S. this weekend,
right.
And I have a decent amount of indoor games, which I think is going to be huge. You're on week 17 right now, Klein, but this week, Giants are playing the Vikings, in Minnesota. I think that's going to be nice. I don't know what to think about this Patriots Cincinnati game. It's not great, but yeah. So I think there's a big advantage for me that a lot of my guys will be playing either indoors or relatively away from the bad weather.
Well, let's see. We got Kansas City's not getting any bad weather, right? It's mostly staying.
No, it's gonna be cold in Kansas City. It's
cold,
but it's not gonna be great weather. But it's not.
Yeah, I think the only thing you really got to worry about is wind. I mean,
right.
Wind is a thing that can really screw stuff up.
Yeah.
Like the Cleveland situation, like that's going to be a windy game.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's going to be a tough situation. And
yeah.
you really, I mean, Klein, you really don't have anybody else to throw in there at receiver. Like, I mean, Olave is like your only good guy. So
yeah. Oh yeah, I've been hurting at wide receiver.
He's almost a must start.
I mean, I could always experiment with Richie James.
Good luck.
and
that would be an
Isaiah
experiment.
Hodgins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit concerned with Kenneth Walker this week, although I feel like he's gonna play. They need to win this game this week, and they're going against arguably one of the toughest teams in the NFL. They not only want Walker to play, but Walker's gonna want to play too. As a rookie, I'm pretty sure he's got some incentives to play for. You know, and he's gonna be playing for a contract too as a rookie, so he's gonna want to get out there.
I
and
think he
perform.
will play.
Yeah, so I think
I think
will
he will.
play, but if he doesn't, I honestly feel fine with Chuba Hubbard. He's fine. Chuba, he's cool.
You're okay with Hubbard? You're okay with Hubbard just stepping in for Walker? You think that's an even trade?
No, I'm not saying it's an even trade. Obviously, I'd rather have Walker in there. But I'm just saying, like, I feel like I've got depth that will soften the blow. Does that make sense? However, at wide receiver, I don't. I don't trust anybody at wide receiver. So if I end up
your
losing,
wide receivers are hot garbage.
yeah, if I end up losing Olave, I don't know what to do because you get to throw someone in there, and I only
That's
have,
why I
only
could
have
not
two
believe-
options.
I was absolutely floored that you didn't put in a waiver claim for Goodwin today. Like I can't even wrap my brain around that. I bet $11 just to stop you from getting him because I figured you were definitely going to be in on him. Like especially in that game environment, stacking with Smith. Like what were you thinking?
Again, I wasn't going to start him this week no matter what.
But why? We just talked about how your receivers are terrible.
Again, I wasn't going to start him this week. So
All right.
I wasn't really looking at, you know, well, could Marquise Goodwin fit in here? And I also don't like the idea of tossing in 3 Seahawks against Kansas
But in a
City.
game environment like Kansas City where they're going to be behind and have to like keep pace and score points.
It's something I considered, and I
You-
chose
those are
not
the
to.
games you want to try to have in your matchup. You want to have like
And I'm
several
saying
players.
I would rather have like a Richie James or Isaiah Hodgins who
You're kidding me.
then the third wide receiver in
You
in
can't
Seattle.
be serious.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Oh,
Tyler Lockett's
goodness.
not playing.
Oh, I didn't know that Lockett's not playing.
You've got to be kidding me.
I had no idea Lockett's not playing.
Too many edibles for you.
No, I have been sick this week. I have been sick as a dog. Puking
dog
on
sitting in your lap.
airplanes. Puking everywhere,
Oh,
everywhere in
man.
this country. I've puked there.
Well,
Yeah.
if you don't get it done this week, we'll look back on this and say what.
No,
What could have been,
We'll have
I
to see what
guess.
Marquise Goodwin can do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What are your thoughts, Sean? I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I really thought that it doesn't matter who plays against the nation this week. Derrick Henry and company are going to steamroll. I just really like, the matchups.
One thing I will say, like, I mean, I guess the thing that I look at this with the nation is he's got a very, very clear quarterback advantage.
Yeah.
And
doubt.
that's a huge thing. I mean, like we saw last week. I mean, Daniel Jones has been kind of floating along with his rushing and with, rushing touchdowns, but he's put up some stinkers. And he could put up a 6-point game and it wouldn't be that surprising. I think he plus, the fact that there's not a second quarterback is really, I mean, it'd be one thing if he had like a healthy Kyler, for instance, and that was the only quarterback he had going, but having just Daniel Jones only is going to be, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough.
I don't know. I actually like Jones this week. I mean,
it's a good matchup.
Yeah, it's a good matchup. Like they're very much in the playoff hunt. Like they need to do something this week. I don't know. They're gonna need to keep pace, and I don't really see Dable taking his foot off the gas. I think it's gonna be a high scoring game.
Yeah, I think it's a good game environment. I do think that of all the teams that Jones could be playing against, and matchup wise, it's definitely softer. But at the same time, I still think I probably would prefer to have either Herbert or Geno um, in their games over Daniel Jones at Minnesota. I just think Jones is not as good in general.
I don't know. I think Lockett's a big loss for Geno.
It is. It definitely is. I mean, I think, Geno Smith is, he's overperformed all year. I mean, do we really think that he's as good as he's been playing this year? I mean, that's not really, I think the jury's still out on that. So, I don't know necessarily that we're going to see Geno Smith put up, 25 to 30 points this week. Even in the match, he may still be in the, 15 to 17 range or whatever. But again, I don't know that we're going to see that much different from Daniel Jones either. I think that he's not he's not a great quarterback.
I said this before the show, but it deserves repeating. The nation is going to live and die with Justin Herbert. Herbert has been kind of a thorn in my side all season because he's been consistent, but not in the way that you really want him to be.
What do you mean?
Like, you really expect him to get a lot more 20-point games and not 12-point games, which is what he's been doing quite a bit lately.
Well, so I think what's interesting here is, like, it's going to be a big weight and a big sweat for Mike, because more than likely it will come down to what Justin Herbert does on Monday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
I think this game will be close enough that it will come down to Herbert. I don't think that the Muppets will have the game won going into Monday night, and I don't think that Lafferty will have a comfortable enough lead that he can say, I don't care about what he does on Monday night. I think it's going to be probably, a Lafferty lead that's going to make it an interesting game for Herbert. Whether that's 12 points or whether that's 22 points or whatever it is. I do think it's going to be interesting to watch that game on Monday night, because that will likely be the difference in the week. So it's going to be fun to wait for that.
And then your team here, you're going to be starting Desmond Ridder, it looks like, and Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really married to any of this yet. I think it's something that I'm going to really consider. I do have Malik Willis, who probably will be playing this week. I do think that he's, has some rushing upside. I liked what I saw from him earlier in the season when he was playing against Kansas City. He looks like he's a guy who can throw the ball down the field, and against a softer matchup. I know it says that Houston's fifth against passers, but a lot of that is because they're blowing teams out and they don't really have to put up a lot of points. So it's something to consider. I don't know what they're going to do with Willis. I don't know. I still don't know if he's going to play. I mean, he could still maybe not play if Tannehill's ready to go, but at this moment, it looks like it is going to be Willis. So he's definitely an option. He may make the start over Ridder. I really haven't made a decision on that yet. I think there is definitely a possibility for Goodwin potentially making this lineup. There's a chance for Pickens, soft matchup against the Raiders. I don't love the idea of Trubisky. I don't think he features Pickens quite as much as Kenny Pickett does. I think I'd like to get a better idea of what's going to happen with Rachaad White. I really love to know, how much usage he's going to get, which may be impossible to find out. But, Arizona is kind of a softer opponent, so there's probably enough to go around between he and Fournette. It does seem that Rachaad White is getting the majority of the touches for the most part. So as long as he gets into the end zone, I'm pretty happy with it. If he gets me to, 10, 15 points, I don't think I'm going to be too upset. And then the rest of my roster just got to do their job. So.
And then you got the Fat Jims. What are you really looking to take advantage of here?
Well, I mean, I do think that, again, we talked a little bit about this Cincinnati New England game. It may not be great conditions. Burrow doesn't really have a lot of rushing upside, so there's a chance that that game is a little bit low scoring, and maybe Burrow doesn't put up the same numbers he normally would. Um, I think Mostert against Green Bay is a nice play for him. I mean, he had a good week last week against Buffalo, running the ball really nicely. I think Miami's favored in that game. I think he'll be featured in the passing game. He's probably Neil's like strongest option here. I really like Mostert. Godwin came off a big week last week. They're playing against Arizona. I'm just kind of hoping they get a pretty sizable lead early against Arizona, which is probably unlikely because the Buccaneers are awful. So I'm sure, Godwin's probably going to be good for, 12, 15 points. Unfortunately, Osborne is a wild card. I mean, I'm not really sure if Neil's married to playing him or not. I think after Jefferson, I think that it's kind of a little bit of a rotating cycle as to who gets the targets. Certainly had a good game last week, but I'm not convinced that he's going to be a guy who can, be leaned on to score, good wide receiver 2 numbers. Kittle, again, I mean, he's got so much talent. You really can't rule him out. I know that, technically Washington is allowing the least points to tight ends in the league. But I don't know if I really, put too much weight on that number. I think it just has to do with how much they choose to utilize him in the passing game. And I think that's oftentimes very much a game plan situation thing. Shanahan's a good coach. I think he, utilizes his weapons well. Debo being out definitely, projects higher for Kittle than he, normally would. I mean, they got other mouths to feed, but I think, Kittle, I think he's going to score 27 points again. No, but I don't think that it's not out of the realm of possibility that he scores, 18 to 20 points and has a really good game still. So, Chubb, Mike mentioned earlier, he's kind of the X factor here. Does he put up a good week? I mean, Neil needs him to score points this week if he wants to win. He needs to get in the end zone. He needs to have a good game. Doesn't really catch the ball, so he is very touchdown dependent. So, I think he's going to have to kind of go up head to head against, CMC, really, if you think about it. So, that's going to be a big question mark. Freiermuth, again, we talked about Vegas's defense kind of being a little bit of a soft spot. And McSorley's got some rushing upside. I think that's really what makes him attractive. He's a pretty bad quarterback, but he can run a little bit. So if you can get, 30, 40 yards rushing out of him and a touchdown, I think Neil's pretty happy with that. But he's got a tough matchup against Tampa Bay. I mean, I know Tampa Bay's defense hasn't been great this year, but I do think that they kind of play a slow-paced game a lot of times when they're playing against teams that are not as good as they are. And I'm putting Arizona in that category. So he's got guys on the bench he can go to. I mean, Adam Thielen is an option, certainly. I think it's probably one or the other between Thielen or Osborne, whichever one he feels a little more comfortable with. We saw Paris Campbell last week not really do too much for him. We've got a new quarterback playing this week in Indy with Nick Foles, and so I don't really know how much we're going to expect to see Paris this week, and I'm sure Neil is probably a little bit hesitant to entrust a roster spot with him this week. And then he's got a bunch of other guys that he can kind of plug in there. Tutu, Noah Brown he picked up this week, so we'll see if those guys.
I see a lot of former Muppets on here.
Yeah, there's been a lot of movement towards the end of the season. It's a lot of shuffling, but I think I've got the advantage. I like my team better, but anything can happen here. You're only an injury away from losing. So,
speaking of losing, let's check on the board bets to see who's losing here. Bengals making the playoffs. Matt, you're losing.
Yeah, it's just about as close to calling it as we possibly could get. He's 99%, so they've almost clinched.
Right. Did you guys make a a wager on? I'm assuming you did. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, golf balls.
Golf balls.
Each bet is at this point. At this point, we're kind of playing for who gets a box of golf balls. Like, and it kind of boils down to Derek Carr. If he makes a push and finishes in the top 10, then I would owe Mike one box of golf balls. If the opposite happens, then he would owe me one box of golf balls, because we split on the other two bets. So, it all comes down to Derek Carr.
Gabe Davis top 20. I don't think that's gonna happen.
No.
Looks like Rob's
It's not
gonna
looking
be
good.
paying Simpson. Jacoby Myers, DJ Moore, another one not looking good for Rush. But we have truckers at all on this one. So I think there were multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
There was truckers.
Yeah, I think it was a sizable bet too. If I remember correctly, I think it was like a case of beer. I think it was a lot.
Yeah.
So that might be expensive.
Well, and Rob and I have our rest of season most points for a golf outing. I think I'm way up in that.
Yeah.
Rob and making silly bets.
Yeah.
Gosh,
He's
I gotta bet
starting
Rob
to struggle.
on one. Yeah.
Yeah, note to self, put more bets with Rob on the board next year.
Yeah, right. Pokemon.
Who's that Pokemon?
Well, hold on. We're gonna do predictions or what?
Oh. I was just going kind of like down the board here. What are your predictions for?
Well, I mean, this is my I've orchestrated this to work out the way I want it to. So I'm gonna say Truckers and Muppet Nation. That's my bet. That's what I'm feeling. How about you guys?
Nation. Okay, Mike.
I will go with the Truckers in the first matchup as well. And I think the Laffertys pull it out after a sweat on Monday night.
Wow.
There's a lot of really good matchups on that board, right? I understand I only have one quarterback, but I think we have enough to.
I'm sorry I need to do this to you, Mike, but I'm gonna need to put you out of your misery this week because your team has been overrated since like week 2. Overrated.
He is in the Final
overrated
Four
by
here,
you.
Yeah.
By you.
Overrated by me?
I understand you're in the final four, but you always think your team's better than what it actually is.
I mean, I'm in the top 4.
But
So here's what I'll say. I think Mike has done a really, really good job of squeezing as much out of his team as he possibly can. Like he doesn't really have a lot of talent here. Like if I look at this top to bottom, I see Justin Jefferson's been great. Ramondre Stevenson's been great. Aside from that, he's made some good, solid moves. He's acquired some players at key positions. Obviously, the Kyler Murray deal didn't work out because he got hurt, and that's just kind of bad luck, right? It's not his fault. But then he's also like picked up some guys and kind of put them in at the right times. Like, I mean, the whole Kansas City running back situation last week that we kind of alluded to prior to that matchup in the show, the ShodCast, it came to fruition. I mean, he ended up really putting up a lot of points between those two guys. I mean, even Pacheco, who had less points, I think he still had like 9 points. Like it wasn't like he didn't do anything.
Right.
So I mean, he ended up having like over 40 points between the two of them. So I mean, I think he's done a really good job managing a team that's not all that talented. I mean, and I'm not saying this to, belittle him at all. Like it's a lot easier to run my team. Like my team, I've hit on more players. Like, but it's not
Sure.
It's not like that's not.
No, I agree. I mean, like
it just has to do with the fact that sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. Like, I mean, it's all a crapshoot. Like you're just trying to pick the best players and pick the guys you think are going to do well. Some stay healthy, some don't. It's just the way it is. And
Yeah, I mean,
my
Cortland
players
Sutton
up
went
until this
for
week.
like essentially the same amount of money as Tyreek Hill. Like it's not even close between which one of those two has been better this year. I spent 1/5 of my budget on Mark Andrews, who is still the number 2 tight end, but numbers wise,
Right.
he's not putting up the kind of numbers that you need out of a guy that you spend much money on. So
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I mean, I like McKinnon has obviously been huge for me recently. That the second touchdown he scored in overtime, like without that, I lose to Grizz last week. Like it's
Former Fat Jim too. Neil's lamenting his release
yeah,
big time. He would love to have him this week.
yeah.
So, so are you picking truckers or gyms in the semi Klein?
I guess I'll pick. I want you to lose this week. I really do.
You should want me to lose.
I want, yeah. I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with
Okay.
gyms this week.
Okay.
So Matt, how disappointed are you that your strategy of benching everyone did not work out? You lost arguably your most important player.
Yeah, it's a tough break. I mean, those kind of things happen. Even on buys, apparently. But it's funny because you look at Twitter and there's everybody's talking about it, like Jalen Hurts, leading teams to buys, and then he ends up going down in the week where he's not playing. And I mean, my team would have been pretty good last week. I didn't add it up, but I think it was probably somewhere in the 130s with the matchups or the players I would have played. And this week I think is going to be a down week for me. I think Neil's got a shot to win. Like I think there's pathways. My team, again, I think my team is better. I do expect to win, but I think that there's definitely a situation where I don't, and it doesn't even come with injury. I think he could just get some big games out of some good guys. And I mean, if Tyreek and Saquon and CMC don't show up, I mean, I could easily not put up 100 points. So especially with the quarterback play, being in question here this week. So, this is the week to catch me. This is the week to do it. Neil can really make some waves by taking out the 2 top teams in the show if he can get it done this week. So it'll be interesting to see.
And then we have the championship after that. There is no more choosing your teams. Your teams will be chosen for you. Really excited to keep this keep the show going into year. What are we going to be into?
2023.
Yeah, but it'd be show 21, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Show 21.
Show 21. Show 2.
Before we move on to
Yes.
Pokemon real quick, I just would like a statement from son of Colts coach Doug McKinney
In regards to what?
last Saturday.
Oh, I guess all I can say is I hope that he's able to keep his job. Sad to say that that's what I'm thinking about, but that's what it boils down to. You don't. I mean, winning solves a lot of things. It solves a lot of problems. When you lose, everything becomes uncertain. So it's a stressful time for him and for me and for everybody that loves my dad. So hopefully things work out for him. Hopefully he's able to retain his job and things look better for next year. Obviously embarrassing loss. I guess you could look at it in a positive light. They do improve their draft position. It's probably the only positive takeaway you get out of that, aside from maybe understanding that changes do need to be made in some regard to coaching staff or what have you. But I think it's in general, it just kind of leaves you more concerned of what may end up happening. So I'll just just, hope and pray that everything goes the way we want it to.
Moving into Pokemon,
That Pokemon!
we've got 2011. This is a tough one. You guys are really gonna need to think about this one. This is like a riddle. Of the two New York Jets pass catchers the Gotham City Rogues started in the playoffs, this tight end racked up more points, averaging 8.9 points a game, slightly better than Santonio Holmes.
He was starting 2 Jets, huh?
Who's
Correct.
their tight end back then?
Gosh, that's a long time ago too. I
Yeah.
mean, 2011. I don't know, Anthony
Decade
Becht
ago.
or like
I think
I
Becht was even pre 2011.
I mean, it wouldn't be. I don't even have a strong guess on this one.
I think this one's a very difficult one.
Yeah,
I'll give you
I
one
mean-
more. You want one more hint?
Yeah, give me
Sure.
another hint, sure.
Initials DK.
I don't know.
All right.
The
Nothing.
first name that came to my mind was Desmond King, but I think he was the cornerback for the Chargers.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not Desmond King.
Yeah.
Definitely not. But we want to thank Van Pelt for joining us today. We really appreciate him coming onto the show, along with Matt, Mike, and the rest of the playoffs here. It feels
Yeah.
good, right? It feels good to have an all-shot playoffs.
We
That's
talked about this earlier, right? I mean, like we said, Vince, like Shad's coming for you.
It's true. I didn't
And
think about
all
that.
year. I mean, Neil did the honors, but I mean, all year we were pretty good. I mean, we were definitely, some of the better team in the league all year. And there was a little bit of a scare there for Mike missing the playoffs, but in the end, it didn't really end up being as close as we thought it might be. And then he ends up punching his ticket to the second round anyway. So it's Mike mentioned the word vindicated earlier. I think in a way that's kind of the way the Shad feels right now, because we've had a pretty good season, pretty successful season. So it's exciting. I'm wishing you guys the best of luck. I'm hoping that at least hopefully we don't run into a lot of injuries this week. Hopefully everybody stays pretty healthy, so that when we do get to the championship, we get a good matchup and everybody's kind of got their full force going. But the fantasy gods make those decisions, not us.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say I wish you guys the best, but I hope, Matt, that your master plan comes crashing down.
Well, in order for that to happen, you need to win, right? So, I mean, obviously you're rooting for yourself to win. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just rooting for me to put Mike out of his misery. I don't know how many words I'm gonna have to eat if you actually win the championship. So
I mean, Derrick Henry could just end it, in that game. I mean, I think he's averaging over 200 yards a game every time he's played the Texans. So he does that and puts a couple in the end zone. Like, that could be the end of the match.
If he puts up like 48 points, I mean, that's gonna be tough to overcome.
Yeah.
that's the hope. That's what we're planning on doing Saturday.
But
morning.
I will say the Texans have been playing like a different team the last couple weeks. So who knows?
We'll see.
Yeah, they're definitely playing with a little bit of spunk, and I think that they're kind of assuming the role of spoiler right now, and they're doing a pretty good job with it. But it's the scary thing is that I don't think that Tennessee is overlooking them. I think that they're going to be very, very ready to feature King Henry. Again, I did not want to play the nation this week, in large part because of Derrick Henry.
So just quick hypothetical, Matt. Had Vince won, it'd be me versus you this week.
I'm not 100% sure of that. I mean, I do think that I strongly considered choosing Vince in the second round, and I told him this last week because I was very scared of that Buffalo Cincinnati game becoming a shootout. But the problem with my team this week is like I just don't think I don't have a good feeling about my scoring output. I just don't. I think I'm gonna have a down week. I really do. And it may end up costing me the week this week. It could very well happen. But I feel like the number one thing is I got to win. Everything else comes second. So, I guess if I were to play against Vince versus you, I mean, again, the nation would have not been in my choices. I would have crossed that out immediately. But looking at Vince's team right now, if I'm going to pull this up here, and comparing him with your roster and with your team, knowing that you've only got one quarterback, I think more than likely and then the question is like how is the weather in Chicago this week for the Bills game? I mean, that's definitely part of this. James Cook and Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and all these guys he's got on the Bills. Like, I mean, how many points do we really see out of those guys if the weather is horrible? Making that decision on a Wednesday is hard to do because the weather changes so much. We've seen that throughout the season this year. But my gut tells me I probably would have selected your team, Mike, if I had the choice between you and Vince, and I guess just roll the dice that, Hurts is going to be healthy again in week 17. And I'd have a full roster to go up against Vince in the championship, even with that Bills Bengals game on Monday night that I have to be sweating out the entire game. I don't know, but it would have been a tough call. I'll tell you that I would have been definitely thinking about it quite a bit.
Gentlemen, we'll see what happens next week. At least one of us will be eliminated, possibly more.
Yeah, at least one of us will be happy.
One of us will be happy, yes. We'll see.
Yeah.
Find out next week. Thanks for
All
joining
right,
us.
best of luck, guys.